Welcome to the Diplomacy Show, where we look at the context behind the text, the meaning behind special events and gestures, the historical and geopolitical compulsions behind foreign policy choices and priorities. Our focus today is on Tunisia. The smallest country in North Africa, and yet at the crossroads of Africa, the Mediterranean, Islamic and Arab worlds. It has a rich history from the time of Rome, Carthage and even earlier. At the same time, it was the harbinger of the Arab Spring in December 2010, when a fruit vendor set himself on fire in the streets of Tunisia, leading to massive popular revolts. Since then, the striving for consolidation of democracy has continued there, even as in other countries there has been a revanchist effort by autocratic and military rule. Tunisia has had a positive relationship with India since its independence in 1956 and even earlier, and India had contributed to the decolonization effort in that country. In January 2020, Tunisia will become a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council for the coming 2 years. So to discuss all these issues, we have as our special guest the Ambassador of Tunisia in New Delhi, Ambassador Nejmeddine Lakhal. Ambassador Lakhal, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Tunisia is not a country that is in the day-to-day consciousness of Indians. So when you interact with people here, or maybe in some of your other assignments, how do you explain to them what characterizes Tunisia? What does Tunisia mean to you?
Well, first, usually when you talk about Tunisia, they get confused and they said sometimes Indonesia, sometimes Malaysia. So I take another approach. So I ask them, do you know Carthage? When I ask if they know Carthage, they know Carthage. Do you know the story of Hannibal and his elephant who went through the Alps to attack Rome? They said they know. And then I start from then and start talking. I think for a nation who has very rich and old civilization as India, and the Indian people are very thirsty to know more about a country. And when you start talking about your civilization, you got their attention. So this is how India is more popular than in Tunisia than Tunisia is popular in India. It's a huge country. I usually call it Planet India. It's not a country, it's more than a country. So in Delhi, but Tunisia is known. But if you go to other parts of India, I think we still have a lot of work to do to introduce and to introduce Tunisia to India.
So when you look at Tunisia's history, which is a rich history as you explained, what do you see as the important markers in Tunisia's history, which would in a sense explain some of the challenges that you face today?
I think if you go through the history of Tunisia before and after the independence, how we were before the independence and what happened after the independence in 1956. If you look at Tunisia, if you go to the first period, if you go to the period of Carthage, Tunisia was founded in 1814 BC by the Phoenician queen Alisa, who came all the way from Lebanon, and then it was the place of many civilizations after that. There was the Roman, there was the Byzantine, the Turk, the Arabs, many civilizations. So it's at this, when we look at Tunisia from the history part, well, it's a very rich country. So after that, we got occupied in 1881 by the French, and then the occupation lasted over 70 years, and that was very harsh period for the people of Tunisia until we got our independence in March 20, 1956, and then we start our republic. The republic was installed because there was a bay, and then in 1956 we installed the republic in Tunisia. Those are the date that mark the history of Tunisia. And of course in 2011, after the overthrown of the a dictatorship regime in Tunisia, and then now we got through free election.
President Bourguiba, who many saw as the father of the nation, and he had led the struggle for independence against the French, and he ruled for many decades. But eventually he was overthrown and exiled. And how do you explain the fact that somebody who was so popular eventually had been pushed out of power? So what changed?
You know, he wasn't exiled. He was in Tunisia. It's true, there was a medical coup, we call it at the time. You know, when you look at human being, at certain age, you are weak. You can't govern, you can't lead. So unfortunately, in his last years, he was too sick to govern. So of course, and then the problem was the people who were surrounding him. So at the time, his prime minister, who just nominated for 1 month and a half, took the opportunity and then put him aside and took over at the time, 1987. But Bourguiba he will always be the father of the nation. I mean, he gave his whole life for Tunisia. He worked very hard. You know, at his death, the only amount they found in his account, I think it's not over 100, the equivalent of $100. He wasn't the guy who was looking about getting rich or but he gave all his effort to educate the people in Tunisia and to build a nation. And I think to a large extent, he succeeded in his mission.
As I mentioned earlier, Tunisia was seen in many ways as the harbinger of the Arab Spring. In December 2010, a fruit vendor put himself on fire. That led to a popular revolt, led to the overthrow of the president at that time, who had ruled for many, many decades and was seen as an autocrat. Now, from your perspective, what is it that led to this trigger in Tunisia and the huge popular reaction that followed?
I think, as Robert Fisk put it, Tunisia was not supposed to happen. I think the Tunisian surprised not only the world, but themselves. I think we all were surprised at the time. So when the president started, so nobody was expecting the regime to fall down. But I think the will of the people, if you look around you in the world, it's only when there is a big demonstration that change happens. So in all over the world. So, and then what happened in Tunisia remind the people of the power of the people, that the people can change things, and that's why it was peaceful. I think they were inspired by the movement of Gandhi, if we go back to India, so it was great inspiration for them, and there was no whatsoever violence or confrontation. Of course, the first day with the forces, because they had instruction from the regime, but you know, because of their determination to go forward, to move, and to make the change, and then that's what happened. I think that's reflected, and then what the people can do.
I remember at that time, in the initial leadership that came to the forefront after the population revolt, there were those also with what was described as the Islamist bent. And it was suggested that in Tunisia there has to be a compromise between those who believe in political Islam and those who believe in secular politics. Did that play out well in Tunisia? Was some kind of compromise worked out, or did one side try to dominate its will on the other? So how did that evolve?
I think when you have a political elite, they all agreed that the main objective for all of them is to secure the country, to bring the stability country. And when they have this objective, everybody was attached to this objective. So that's what one of the what helped what helped the experience to succeed. And the other one, the ingredient. I think you have very huge educated population in Tunisia, and that's why we can. The role of Bourguiba that he did was insisting. You know, at the time, 30% of the budget goes to education in Tunisia, not buying arms. So we are a small country; we don't buy that much arms. But 30% of the budget used to go to education. When you have an educated population, and when you have the political elite agreed on one objective, which is to succeed in the mission and to get the country out of the problem it has, I think that helped a lot.
Your new constitution was adopted on 26 January 2014. So what are the important features of this new constitution that Tunisia has adopted, reflecting the post-Arab Spring phase of consensus in Tunisian society?
You know, this is not the first constitution that known in Tunisia. In fact, the first constitution of Tunisia. It goes back to thousands of years. It was the constitution of Carthage that Aristotle talked about. In the 18th century, we have our first constitution. The second one was in 1957. And this is the third constitution have been adopted after the radical change that happened in Tunisia. It insists on the freedom of the people. It insists of it's a very progressive constitution that is here to protect the right of everyone to right
of minorities, women.
We don't have minority, but you know, we protect. We have our Jewish community, our Christian community, but this constitution for all Tunisian people, and it to protect the right for freedom, for organization, for expression. It insists on the separation of power between the judiciary, executive power, and the it insists on the freedom of the press. So it's a guarantee for the right of every single Tunisian, and it also includes some provision for the new generation to make sure that the new generation will find a lot of asset in their countries.
One of the problems that Tunisia has faced, including after the December 2010 episode, is the challenge of terrorism. And you've had major terrorist incidents in Tunisia in 2012, 13, and then 2015. How are you dealing with this challenge, and how do you look at these people who have decided to resort to extreme violence and terrorist attacks to challenge the political structure?
You know, as any country on this planet, I mean, we were victim of terrorism action. So this phenomenon, nobody, I think there is no country, whatever its powerful is, can deal with that alone. So it needs an international effort between all members of the international community. We were, as India was, as many other countries, the victim of terrorism in 2015 mostly. So and then now we have new strategies that have been adopted to fight terrorism, but you know, we fight terrorism in the framework of the law of the country, of the law of the rule of law. So it's this is the only way you can win the fight against terrorism. It's not you shouldn't count only on the security measure, but you should count also on the how to treat those people. How some of them, you know, have been manipulated and get into the grouping, some by ignorance, some by lack of education. So you have to, and some by because of their situation. Some people explore their poor situation, their bad situation, and then convince and manipulate them to go and you know, be a member of terrorist organization. So our approach is diversified.
There have been reports that several thousand Tunisians may have gone to fight along with the Islamic State in Syria. Now that the space under the Islamic State has shrunk to some extent, are they coming back to Tunisia? Are they in camps in Syria? So how are you looking at that situation?
Well, to be honest, talking about 7,000 to 8,000, it's a little bit exaggeration that the media have been exaggerated. Nobody knows exactly what the number. If we have names and of those persons, we would know exactly. There are, I wouldn't say there are some Tunisians who went to those zone of conflict. Some of them have died there. But we have a law, we have a constitution, we have rule of law in Tunisia. So anybody who is accused of crime, who has blood in his hand, of course they will go through a due process, and then with the respect of law, and then if they're guilty, they will be punished.
So looking at the history of Tunisia, the challenges you face in the neighborhood, the evolution since 2010, what are for today Tunisia, its foreign policy priorities and challenges there?
Well, if I think, we talk about the challenges for foreign policy of Tunisia, the first one is it's how to support the national effort to get a successful economic process. We finished the political process, but as a country who doesn't own a lot of efforts, a lot of natural resource, so we count on ourselves.
So in your neighborhood, for example, in Libya, the situation is very destabilized. There are rival groups competing for power. How has that impacted on Tunisia?
it's, you know, its impact our national security go beyond our border. I mean, security in Libya, it's our security. And as you know, the full population of the Maghreb, you know, they are one people in 4 or 5 countries. So, and then if it's not going well, if it's the situation not stable in Libya, it's affect us. You know, the relations are very close. We used to have a lot of exchange on the economic side, on the political side. So now, because what's happening in Libya, of course, we've been from the beginning, Tunisia have been very supportive of the dialogue that I mentioned before. We hosted many meeting in Tunisia. We supported the agreement of that have been reached in Morocco and between the different factions to have. So we still support them. And then there was initiative, a three-party initiative between Tunisia and Egypt and Algeria that were initiated by the late President Beji Qaid Sabsi. So, and we will do whatever we can to get the Libyan sitting together and find a peaceful solution. We think, and we always think that the only way to lead the Libyan people to a peaceful solution is dialogue and concession.
No, I remember way back in 2011 when the situation in Libya had been destabilized, a large number of Indians who had to be evacuated from Libya also were evacuated through Tunisia. And the government of Tunisia had played a very important role in facilitating that. So taking off from there, how do you see the bilateral relationship with India? What are the strengths, challenges? What do you see as the opportunities?
I think the Tunisian relationship have been always excellent, and we are trying to make them better. On the political level, they are excellent. So when you have political relation at that level, I mean, it's very, it's a pillar that will help you to improve and to promote further. There are a lot of opportunity. Unfortunately, we are not exploring the whole potential that exists between the two countries. I think in 2017, when we had the 13th session of the joint meeting, it was co-chaired by at the level, the first time at the level of Minister of External Affairs. I think that we adopted many recommendations. We adopt a roadmap for the future in that deal with many key sectors and priority for the two countries.
In terms of the people-to-people contact, recently Tunisia introduced a measure that would allow Indian tourists to go to Tunisia without visa. Can you elaborate on that, and what was the reason for introducing that?
You know, Tunisia and Tunisia, as I told you, we are very old friends, and the relations are very long-standing between two countries. In 2017, 1st of October, the Tunisian government took the decision to waive the visa requirement for Indian tourists. So we'd like we know India through the Bollywood movies, but there are a lot of Indians who don't know Tunisia. So we decide to waive this requirement, and now Indian tourists are welcome. It's not visa on arrival; it's just you arrive that, and the custom will stamp your passport, and you're there for 3 months. The only thing you need is a reservation and your ticket. That's the only thing that you reserve. So the Indians are welcome to Tunisia to visit, to discover Tunisia, which is, I think, as old as India when it comes to civilization. I think there are a lot of things they can find there. If they're looking for food, spicy food, they can find it. If they're food for history side, they will find beaches, they will find whatever they're looking for, they will find it in Tunisia.
And you have the lovely Mediterranean coast too.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Olives are grown in Tunisia in large volume and value, and it's a major export for Tunisia. In India also now an effort is being made to grow olives. So is that potentially an area of cooperation between the two countries? And I know that last winter you had hosted a major food festival here focusing on Tunisian food. Is that part of your effort for enhancing the people-to-people dimension of the cooperation?
You know, they say, we have probably, let's say, the closest way to the man's heart is his stomach. So I would say the closest heart the closest way to the man's brain, it's his stomach too. So I think we share a lot of when it comes to food. Food, it's reflecting the tradition, the civilization, and then we have a lot of similarity when it comes to the food. I mean, we eat both spices, we use, we make sweets, and then if I come to India, for example, I don't have a lot of problem eating, only when it's too spicy, but there are some. So as this is within the framework of people to people contact to present Tunisia to India. I think the food was one of the event that we did last year. It was very successful one. So you're right, Tunisia, one of the main producer and exporter of olive oil. This production goes back to the Roman and the Carthaginian period. So ours is mostly organic. So this year we have a huge production of olive oil. It goes I think more than 350,000 tons. And we are looking forward to export some of this natural remedy to India. And also we are ready to help India to promote its own olive oil production.
And also looking at another element in the people-to-people relationship, what is the effort that you are making in terms of engaging the Indian film industry, which has impact in different parts of the world, including in large parts of Africa?
That's true. You know, we come to know India through Bollywood. So when a kid, I remember one of the movie that at the time was Mother India. So that's the movie I remember. So of course, and as you know, that Indian movie makers are looking for a new destination, and Tunisia can be one of this destination for many reasons. First of all, landscape. If you're looking for any part of, if you are looking for the south, for the desert, for the you will find it. The climate you can change from just by traveling 2 hours. If you go to the north, you will find snow. If you go to the desert, you found a desert and different. When it comes to the advantage of being very close to Europe, it's 2.5 hours. The competitiveness of the prices. I mean, the cost of making a movie in Tunisia, it costs, and also, you know, the technician. We have very competent people that work for many movies, including, for example, Star Wars, English Patient, The Pirate, Indiana Jones. Those are just a couple of the movies have been shot in Tunisia. So we are working hard to attract Indian movie makers to come into Tunisia and to discover it. And also they have the Roman site. We have, if we look at the different sites we have in Tunisia, including the famous Coliseum of El Jem, which is a very well preserved piece of history. So we look forward to have more Indian filmmakers come to Tunisia and discover the land of Tunisia.
So as you said, the political relations between India and Tunisia are very strong. Economic relationship not as strong, maybe more needs to be done. Yeah. Some have suggested that one challenge for India has been that while it has easy access in what is described as Anglophone Africa, where English language is spoken, it has more challenges in Francophone Africa, where the French is the foreign language that is used. Has that been a factor in this?
I think India has good relation with all Africa, Anglophone and Francophone. So, and I think the language now, when you can see there's some project in Africa Francophone and Africa Anglophone. And Tunisia will be always here as a partner to partner with India when it comes to the region, if it needed in the region of Francophone. I think the opportunities are there, and then we can be a sustainable partner for India, for if in case India need that in the Francophone region. So.
Well, Ambassador Lakhal, I want to thank you for joining the show. We had a very deep discussion on Tunisia's history, your current political challenges, the foreign policy priorities that the country faces, and good luck to you as you look at the establishment of the new post-election government in Tunisia and your membership, non-permanent membership of the UN Security Council for the coming 2 years. Well, thank you for joining this show.
Thank you very much. It was great to be with you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.